We finally got the chance to ride the Canyon TorqueOn. This is the TorqueOn 8. It was introduced back in February this year, 2021. Canyon has moved away from model year, so this bike with this color scheme will continue for 2022. This is a well-spec'd bike considering the price. As always, I don't like talking too much about international prices because I often get them wrong. So check out canyon.com for the price in your country. But chances are this bike is well priced in every market. In Norway, it's just under 55,000 Norwegian kroners. And considering the spec you get, it's a great price. And that's how it is with these direct sales bikes. You can't easily visit the shop to ask stupid questions, but you do get the bike at a great price. And this bike has got the entry-level RockShox SEB, the SEB R. This is a 38mm stanchion fork, which is really rugged and solid, hard hitter. The rear suspension is the Super Deluxe Select, so that's also the most basic version, but it is the Super Deluxe, so it's a nice shock. Drivetrain is all Shimano SLX, great range, shifts really nicely under load. I like Shimano drivetrains, and also the brakes are the Shimano SLX, which is a really great brake. Dropper post is 150mm travel on all sizes but size small. The small is 125mm. We've got 150mm on this size large bike. Then there's the wheels, the DT Swiss H1900. It's a really great wheel set, I think. I prefer these over many of the mixed, no-name, no-brand wheels that often come at the lower price points. And as you might have noticed, it's 27.5 wheels front and rear. I don't know why, but I was sort of expecting a 29er mullet setup on Canyon. They sort of invented it. Well, they didn't, but they were among the first brands to introduce the mullet setup for EMTBs. Front rear, it's a great tire, Maxxis Minion DHF, and it's the max grip version with double down casing. So it's really sticky rubber. On the back, for some reason, they went with a less burly tire, but it's the Exo Plus casing, so it's still burly enough, and it's a faster rolling tire with the Max Terra rubber compound. 2.5 inches wide on the front, 2.6 inches at the back. Then there's the motor and the battery. Shimano EP8 motor. We really like this motor for technical trail riding. We think it's probably the best motor for sort of trailsy, challenging, slippery, whatever trails. And then it's the battery. Canyon is probably the only one that has launched a new bike for 2021 with a 500 watt-hours battery. And I'm sure a lot of people won't be happy with that, but yeah, if you want more range, you could buy the Canyon TorqueOn dual battery option. In Norway, that's like 2,300 kroners more than the single battery version. So it's about just over 57,000 Norwegian for the dual battery option. The advantage, of course, is a lighter battery, a lighter bike. The battery is shorter, so you don't get a lot of weight high up, far forward, so you're keeping the mass closer to the bottom bracket, to the center of the bike, which in theory should help handling. The TorqueOn is 180mm travel front, 175 travel rear. The head angle is pretty slack at 63.5 degrees. C-tube angle is 74 degrees. Wheelbase is 1273mm, I believe, which, of course, that's a long wheelbase for a size large bike. But we often ride 160mm travel bikes. This is 180mm travel. So that will inevitably increase the wheelbase. And the wheelbase isn't really that long for a bike with this amount of travel. And that's because of the chainstay length. The rear center, the rear end, it's 430 millimeters, and that's extremely short. A bike such as the Kenevo, which is a similar bike, 27.5 wheels, it's got a chainstay length of 454 millimeters. So 24 millimeters more than the Canyon TorqueOn, and that's significant. And that can be felt on the trails. When we took the bike to the trails, we pointed the bike straight into trouble, and it didn't really give us the stability and confidence that we were sort of expecting. But that sort of makes sense. This bike has got a small 27.5 front wheel. Considering the amount of suspension travel, the wheelbase is relatively short, the rear end is short, the bike is quite lightweight. We weighed it in at 23.8 kilos without pedals. So setting this thing up tubelessly, putting on the pedals, you should be below 24 kilos. Anyway, we tried again, not just riding straight forward as we're used to with a lot of the long wheelbase 29er heavy EMTBs. We decided to try picking good lines, and the bike was really rewarding to ride. As we began picking better lines and we had the confidence to hit the lines hard, the bike was absolutely shredding. It was so easy to maneuver, so easy to handle, and picking lines is much easier on such a responsive bike. So our riding style changed a bit from what we're used to with the big 29er heavy straight lining EMTBs. And man, that's fun. This bike really is a surprisingly good bike on our local trails, and also it feels like it's made for riding park. So on the flatter sections, a long travel bike really usually isn't that inspiring. But this bike surprised us. You don't need that much speed to make the bike come alive, and just bouncing about on the flat sections, doing slow, low-speed turns, it handled it well. And as for the climbs, yeah, it's a 430 mil travel rear end. That's not ideal for going up the bike park, which usually is quite steep. But the front center is quite generous. The front end, so when sitting on the bike, there's lots of room to move forward and keep the front wheel on the ground. As usual, Canyon is using their e-bike specific saddle on their e-bikes. It's got this sort of edge at the back that offers extra support when climbing. The problem is when we climb the really steep stuff, we're not sitting back here. We would tip backwards right away. We're standing and leaning forward. So it's not really much help in this extra edge. And when riding sitting down, this edge sort of hampers, it's in the way. It leaves us less room for moving around on the saddle. We're not convinced by this saddle on this bike. We've ridden the Canyon Neuron On previously, which has got longer chainstays. And on that bike we were climbing seated more often, and on that bike we like the saddle. But anyway, the saddle is, apart from that, the saddle is comfortable, and yeah, it's not a big deal. So to sum it up, the Canyon Neuron On is quite a different bike to a lot of the EMTBs on the market. It's not about straight lining, riding straight into surprisingly large, huge obstacles. It's a lot more about having fun. And I, for one, can easily forgive Canyon for going with a 500 watt-hours battery on such a bike. And it surprised us a lot, this bike, because it's probably the most nimble long travel bike we've ever ridden. It's the most fun long travel EMTB on the flatter, lower speed trails, and a bit challenging for the really gnarly high speed fast sections. So I can only describe this bike with one, or should I say 2 words: absolute shredder. That's it. Appreciate any likes and subscribes. Thanks for watching.